Picture this, you're sitting in the most exclusive seafood restaurant on the West Coast, where a single lobster costs more than most people make in a week. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across marble tables. The air smells like money, privilege, and fresh Atlantic lobster flown in daily. Now imagine you're watching a man in a worn leather jacket and faded jeans walk through those polished doors. He doesn't look like he belongs, the hostesses whisper. Other diners stare, but this man, he orders the most expensive item on the menu without blinking. Then, just as he's about to take his first bite, a young black waitress slides him a folded napkin. For words scribbled in desperate handwriting that will expose a conspiracy so dark it will shake the entire restaurant industry to its core. This isn't just a story about food. This isn't just another tale of workplace drama. This is about human trafficking. This is about modern-day slavery happening right under the noses of society's elite. And it's about one woman's courage to risk everything to save lives that the world had forgotten. Before we dive into this incredible true story, hit that like button and subscribe for more shocking revelations that will change how you see the world. Because what you're about to hear will make you question every high-end restaurant you've ever trusted. The man walking through those doors wasn't just any customer. His name was Marcus Washington, and at 41, he was worth $2.3 billion. But nobody in the Neptune's Crown restaurant knew that. All they saw was a black man in clothes that didn't match their dress code, trying to get a table at the most exclusive dining establishment in San Francisco. Marcus didn't build his fortune by accident. Born in Detroit to a single mother who cleaned offices at night, he learned early that the world judges you before you even speak. His first computer came from a pawn shop. His first business loan was denied 47 times before one brave banker took a chance. Now he owned Washington Industries, a tech empire specializing in supply chain transparency. His software helped companies track their products from source to consumer, exposing corruption, illegal labor practices, and fraud across dozens of industries. But success hadn't changed his core belief. Real change happens when you see problems up close, not from a boardroom window. That's why he was here tonight, dressed down and anonymous, following up on a tip that had landed on his desk 3 days ago. The Neptune's Crown wasn't just expensive, it was legendary. Perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, it catered to tech moguls, Hollywood elite, and politicians. The waiting list was 6 months long. The cheapest entree was for $100, and according to the anonymous email Marcus had received, it was also home to one of the most sophisticated human trafficking operations on the West Coast. The email had been simple but chilling. They're not employees. They're prisoners. Kitchen staff work 20-hour days, no pay, no freedom. Management controls their passports, their housing, their lives. Someone needs to see this. Someone with power needs to care. Marcus had read enough similar reports to know most were hoaxes. But something about this one felt different. The details were too specific, the fear too raw. So he did what he always did when data wasn't enough. He went to see for himself. The hostess, a perfectly groomed woman in her 30s, looked him up and down like he was a stain on her marble floor. "Do you have a reservation?" she asked, her voice dripping with polite condescension. "I'd like a table for one," Marcus replied calmly. She glanced at her leather-bound book, though they both knew she wasn't really looking. "I'm afraid we're completely booked tonight. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of the establishments down the street." Marcus had expected this. He pulled out a thick roll of cash, all hundreds, more money than most people carried in a year. "I understand you might have a cancellation," he said quietly. Her eyes widened slightly. Money talked, even when the messenger didn't fit their usual profile. "Let me check with management," she stammered. 5 minutes later, Marcus was seated at the worst table in the house, next to the kitchen doors, partially hidden behind a pillar. Perfect. He had a clear view of the staff entrance and could hear every conversation coming from the back of the house. That's when he saw her. Keisha Thompson moved through the dining room like a dancer, balancing multiple plates with effortless grace. At 28, she had the kind of quiet strength that comes from surviving things most people couldn't imagine. Her smile was professional, warm, but Marcus noticed something others missed. Her eyes were constantly scanning, alert, like someone who'd learned to watch for danger. She wasn't supposed to be working the main dining room tonight. The manager, Mr. Rodriguez, usually kept her in the private banquet area or relegated her to busser duties. But they were short-staffed, and even his prejudices couldn't overcome the need for experienced service. When she approached Marcus's table, something passed between them, a moment of recognition. Not that they knew each other, but they shared something deeper. The understanding that comes from being underestimated, from fighting to prove your worth in spaces that don't welcome you. "Good evening, sir. Can I start you with something to drink?" Her voice was steady, professional. Marcus studied the wine list briefly. "I'll have the 1998 Dom Perignon," he said. "And I'd like to see your finest lobster." Kaisha blinked. The champagne alone cost $800 a bottle. The Imperial Lobster, their signature dish, was $1,200. She'd been serving at Neptune's Crown for 8 months and had never seen anyone at a back table order items that expensive. "Certainly, sir, the Imperial Lobster is our signature dish, a 4-pound Maine lobster with caviar, truffle butter, and our special saffron sauce." "Would you like that prepared?" "Yes," Marcus said simply. "And please, take your time, I'm in no hurry." As Kaisha walked back toward the kitchen, she felt the familiar knot in her stomach tighten. She'd seen what happened in that kitchen, she'd witnessed things that kept her awake at night. And now she was about to send an order back there, to the place where nightmares lived behind stainless steel doors. The Neptune's Crown kitchen was a gleaming monument to culinary excellence on the surface. Professional-grade equipment, immaculate prep stations, awards lining the walls. But Kaisha knew the truth that lay beneath the perfect facade. In the back prep area, hidden from public view, worked a team of 8 kitchen staff who never left the restaurant. They lived in a converted storage room in the basement, sleeping on cots, sharing 2 bathrooms. They worked from 6 a.m. to 2 a.m. every single day, with no days off, no sick leave, no pay beyond the cramped room and basic meals. They were all immigrants, all vulnerable, all trapped. Maria, a 34-year-old woman from Guatemala, had been promised a legitimate job with fair wages when she crossed the border 2 years ago. Instead, she found herself washing dishes for 20 hours a day, her passport confiscated for safekeeping. Carlos, barely 19, sent money to support his sick mother back in Honduras, except he never actually received money to send. The wages existed only on paper, always eaten up by housing costs, food costs, and document fees. When anyone complained or tried to leave, management reminded them they were undocumented, that one phone call could have them deported, that they were lucky to have protection at all. Head chef Antoine Dubois in the operation with military precision. A James Beard Award winner with restaurants in 3 countries, he was celebrated for his innovative cuisine and commitment to authentic ingredients. What food critics didn't know was that his success was built on the backs of people he treated like property. But tonight, something was different in the kitchen. Maria, usually silent and focused, kept glancing toward the dining room. She'd overheard Kaisha talking to another server about the man at table 12, the one who'd ordered the Imperial Lobster without flinching at the price, who'd paid cash for $800 bottle of champagne. As she prepared the lobster, Maria made a decision that would change everything. She'd been trying to find the courage for months, and maybe, just maybe, this was her chance. Kaisha picked up the lobster plate from the pass, marveling at the presentation. The massive lobster was split perfectly, the meat glistening with truffle butter, caviar dots arranged like jewels across the shell. It was a masterpiece that represented hours of skilled labor. Labor that would never be fairly compensated. As she lifted the plate, she felt something crinkle beneath it. A small piece of paper, barely visible, tucked under the edge. Her heart started racing. She knew exactly who had put it there. Without looking at the note, she carried the plate through the dining room, her hands steady despite the storm brewing in her chest. She placed the lobster in front of Marcus with practiced elegance. "Your Imperial Lobster, sir, prepared with our signature saffron sauce and beluga caviar. Is there anything else I can bring you?" Marcus looked up at her, and for a moment, she saw something in his eyes that made her brave. "Actually," she said, lowering her voice, "you might want to check under your plate before you eat. Sometimes the kitchen ... leaves special messages for VIP guests." Then she walked away, her heart hammering against her ribs, knowing she'd just crossed a line she could never uncross. Marcus waited until Kaisha was safely back in the service station before carefully lifting the edge of his plate. The paper was small, torn from what looked like an order pad with words written in shaky handwriting. They keep us locked in basement, no pay, can't leave. Passports stolen, please help us, Maria, kitchen prep. The lobster suddenly looked different. The caviar seemed less like luxury and more like guilt. The truffle butter carried the bitter taste of exploitation. Marcus folded the note carefully and slipped it into his jacket pocket. He pulled out his phone and typed a quick message to his head of security. Need immediate background check on Neptune's Crown Restaurant, SF, focus on labor practices, immigration status of kitchen staff, and any reports to authorities, silent investigation. Then he did something that surprised even himself. He ate the lobster. Every bite was deliberate, thoughtful. Not because he was enjoying it, but because walking out now would only create suspicion. If there were really people being held against their will in this building, rushing could put them in more danger. He needed proof, he needed a plan, and he needed to be very, very careful. After finishing his meal, Marcus asked for the check. As Kaisha approached with a leather bill folder, he made sure to make eye contact. The food was extraordinary, he said loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Then, quieter, I'd like to speak with the manager about possibly hosting a private event here, something ... significant. Kaisha nodded, understanding immediately. I'll get Mr. Rodriguez for you, sir. 5 minutes later, a short, impeccably dressed man in his 50s approached the table. Diego Rodriguez had managed Neptune's Crown for 7 years, transforming it from a merely expensive restaurant into a destination for the ultra-wealthy. What the owners didn't know was how he'd managed to keep labor costs so impossibly low while maintaining such high service standards. Mr. Rodriguez extended his hand with a practiced smile. Johnson, Marcus lied smoothly. Robert Johnson. I understand you host private events, absolutely. We have a private dining room that seats up to 30, and we can arrange exclusive use of the entire restaurant for the right occasion. What kind of event were you considering? Marcus leaned forward slightly. I represent a group of investors who are very interested in. How shall I put this ... the operational efficiency of successful restaurants. We've heard remarkable things about your cost management and would be interested in a behind-the-scenes tour, possibly as part of a larger investment discussion. Rodriguez's eyes lit up. Private events were profitable, but potential investors were life-changing. I'd be delighted to arrange something. Perhaps a kitchen tour, meet with our award-winning chef, discuss our unique operational model. Exactly, Marcus said, when would be convenient. Tomorrow evening, we could arrange a private tasting after regular service hours. You could meet the full team, see our operation when it's less ... busy. Marcus shook hands with Rodriguez, sealing what the manager thought was a business opportunity but was actually the beginning of the end of his criminal enterprise. As Marcus left the restaurant, Kaisha watched from the service station. She didn't know who he really was or what he planned to do, but something in his bearing told her he was different from their usual customers. He had listened, he had cared, and tomorrow night, maybe things would finally change. In the basement of Neptune's Crown, Maria lay on her narrow cot, staring at the ceiling. She'd passed the note without being caught, but the fear was eating her alive. What if she'd made things worse? What if management found out? What if the stranger didn't care or couldn't help? But for the first time in 2 years, she also felt something else, hope. Marcus drove back to his downtown penthouse, but he didn't sleep. Instead, he spent the night on encrypted calls with his security team, federal contacts, and immigration attorneys. By morning, he had a plan that would either save 8 lives or put them all in serious danger. The next evening arrived like a storm. Marcus returned to Neptune's Crown at 10 p.m., this time dressed in an expensive suit and accompanied by 2 business associates who were actually undercover federal agents specializing in human trafficking cases. Rodriguez greeted them with enthusiasm, leading them through the dining room and into the kitchen where Chef Dubois waited with barely concealed irritation. He hated these dog and pony shows for potential investors, but Rodriguez was the boss. Welcome to the heart of Neptune's Crown, Dubois announced with his thick French accent. Here we create culinary magic with a team of dedicated professionals who understand the meaning of excellence. Marcus nodded appreciatively, but his eyes were scanning the kitchen, looking for the people Maria had written about. The main kitchen was staffed with the usual crew, legal employees who would clock out and go home after service. But where were the others? Impressive operation, Marcus said. I'm particularly interested in your overnight prep work. I understand you maintain 24-hour operations. Rodriguez glanced at Dubois nervously. We do extensive prep work, yes. Early morning preparation is key to our quality. I'd love to see that area, Marcus pressed. My investors are particularly interested in round-the-clock efficiency models. Dubois hesitated. The prep area is quite basic, I'm afraid. Not very impressive for guests. Nonetheless, Marcus said firmly, we'd appreciate the complete tour. Reluctantly, Rodriguez led them toward the back of the kitchen, through a set of swinging doors into the prep area. It looked normal enough: industrial refrigerators, prep tables, storage shelves. But Marcus noticed the basement door, marked storage, authorized personnel only. And downstairs, Marcus asked casually. Just wine storage and supplies, Rodriguez said quickly, nothing interesting. That's when Marcus heard it, a sound that made his blood freeze. The faint sound of someone coughing coming from below, not just one person, several people. I think we've seen enough, Dubois said, moving toward the exit. But Marcus was already walking toward the basement door. Just a quick look at your storage systems, he said, reaching for the handle. Sir, I'm afraid that area is off-limits for insurance reasons, Rodriguez said, panic creeping into his voice. Marcus turned to face him and, for the first time that evening, let his mask slip. Mr. Rodriguez, I'm going to give you one opportunity to open this door voluntarily. If you don't, my associates here will open it for you. The two federal agents stepped forward, badges now visible. Rodriguez's face went white. Dubois started backing toward the kitchen exit but found his path blocked by a third agent who had been positioned there. FBI, the lead agent announced, this is a federal investigation into human trafficking and forced labor. Mr. Rodriguez, you have the right to remain silent. As the arrests began upstairs, Marcus descended into the basement. What he found was worse than he had imagined. 8 people living in conditions that belonged in a horror movie, not beneath a luxury restaurant. Cramped, unsanitary, and secured with locks that could only be opened from the outside. Maria looked up as the basement door opened, expecting to see Rodriguez or Dubois coming to punish someone for some imagined infraction. Instead, she saw the man from the restaurant, the one who had ordered the lobster. Maria, Marcus asked gently, I'm here to help. You're safe now. She started crying, not from fear but from relief. After 2 years of captivity, someone had finally listened. Someone had finally cared enough to act. The rescue operation took 3 hours. 8 victims were taken to a specialized facility where they would receive medical care, legal assistance, and the support they needed to rebuild their lives. Rodriguez and Dubois were charged with multiple federal crimes, including human trafficking, forced labor, and conspiracy. The Neptune's crown was closed permanently within 48 hours, but the story doesn't end there. 3 weeks later, Marcus Washington held a press conference outside the former location of Neptune's crown. This time, he wasn't hiding his identity. Standing beside him were Maria, Carlos, and 3 other survivors who had chosen to speak publicly about their ordeal. Human trafficking isn't something that happens in other countries or other communities, Marcus told the gathered reporters. It's happening in our cities, in businesses we frequent, hidden in plain sight. The people who served your food, cleaned your offices, maintained your buildings, some of them might be prisoners, not employees. He announced the launch of the Washington Foundation's new initiative, a nationwide program to identify and combat forced labor in high-end hospitality businesses. Using his company's supply chain technology, they would help law enforcement track patterns that might indicate trafficking operations. Maria stepped forward to the microphone, her voice shaking but determined. I want to thank the man who listened when I found the courage to write that note. But mostly, I want to thank the waitress who helped me pass it. She risked her job, maybe her safety, to help a stranger. That's real courage. Keisha Thompson, now working as a coordinator for the Washington Foundation's Victim Services Program, smiled from the crowd. She'd found her calling in helping other survivors navigate the path to freedom and justice. The investigation that began with a lobster dinner and a folded piece of paper ultimately led to the rescue of 47 trafficking victims across 12 restaurants in 5 states. It exposed a network of high-end establishments that used forced labor to maintain their profit margins while serving society's elite. Marcus Washington's net worth didn't change much after the Neptune's Crown investigation, but his impact on the world increased exponentially. Sometimes the most important business decisions aren't made in boardrooms, they're made at table 12 when someone brave enough to care meets someone desperate enough to hope. The lesson here isn't complicated. In a world where it's easier to look away, to assume someone else will handle the problems, to convince ourselves that surely things can't be that bad in places that look so polished, sometimes all it takes is one person willing to see the truth. Maria's note was for words, "Please help us survive," but the real message was longer, that human dignity exists everywhere, even in basements, even in silence, even when the world has forgotten you exist. And sometimes, if you're incredibly lucky, someone is willing to listen. If this story moved you, if it opened your eyes to possibilities you hadn't considered due to things. First, hit that like button and share this video. Stories like this need to be heard because awareness is the first step toward change. Second, pay attention, really look at the people serving you, cleaning for you, working around you. Not everyone who smiles is happy. Not everyone who works is free. And sometimes the person who most needs your help is standing right in front of you, waiting for someone to care enough to see them. Because real change doesn't start with grand gestures or political speeches. It starts with human connection, it starts with courage. And it starts with someone like you deciding that other people's freedom matters more than your own comfort. The next time you're in a restaurant, remember Maria, remember Kaisha, and remember that sometimes the most important thing you can order isn't on the menu, it's just served with a side of basic human decency. And that's a meal everyone deserves to enjoy.